Hello everyone, Pulse here, and I want to welcome you to another episode of imPULSE Reactions. Now in today's episode we're going to cover the fairly recently revealed WildStar payment model, and I also want to discuss what this means for the game. I have some theories I want to discuss with you guys about as to why the payment model is being given to us in this fashion, and I also want to discuss a little bit the reaction to the announcement itself. But let's start off with the actual payment model before we get into any theorizing or any of that sort of stuff. WildStar is going to come out with a typical $15 a month subscription fee, which we haven't seen in a while, and for good reason, because pretty much every game that has come out post-WoW with a subscription model has flopped really hard. But in addition to this subscription model, we're also going to have a $60 box purchase price. Now these two things combined are a fairly, I want to say hefty barrier to entry. It's pretty ridiculous, I have to say. That's a fairly expensive MMO that we don't know how well it's going to do. So you have a pretty high price to get into this game. But in addition to this, we're also going to have a system they're calling cred. Now, cred is a currency which can be bought for real-life money from Carbine on their site, and then you can sell that in-game, and then, as you would expect, you can buy that for in-game gold from player to player in that sort of fashion through what they're calling a CX commodities store. And what you can do with it is you buy a sufficient amount of it, and you can trade it in for in-game time. You can buy a month of it for such and such amount of cred. Now, the thing that's a little bit odd here is that you can pay $15 a month normally to further your subscription, or you can pay $20 for enough cred, which would equate to that same 1 month of game time. Now, this is a little bit odd, but the reasoning that we've been given is that Carbine is trying to alleviate gold farmers in gold sales sites and that sort of thing. And I'm not really sure how I feel about it, because in all honesty, it just feels shady, because what's going to happen is people who are going to buy gold from other sites and have the disposable income, or whatever reason they can justify to themselves that it's okay to buy gold from sites and stuff like that, they're going to buy and sell high amounts of this currency through the CX commodity store, and then they're going to just rule the economies in the game, because they're going to have control of who is playing. They're going to have control of like just ludicrous amounts of money, because they can turn real life money into gold, and they're just literally going to be doing what Carbine says they're trying to prevent. And even though there's a $5 extra tacked on fee, I just don't feel like that's enough. That's not going to stop these people that were going to do it anyway. It just isn't. And I feel like that this cred system is fairly misplaced here, and the only real logic that I could think that Carbine and NCSoft must be thinking is, well, this game, we don't have any way to prevent the gold sales, and we don't have any way to prevent the gold farm. And we don't really have a way to prevent the economy from getting a little bit screwed up by these things. So, you know what? Let's turn it into a way that we can make money. Let's pretty much copy the very idea of gold sales and gold farming and the sites, what those guys do, and then let's turn it into a system in our game. And it just feels a little bit wrong. It doesn't feel like it's in the place to help the player, and unless they can really prove to me that they are taking in this extra cash and turning it into more content for the players themselves, I don't really feel all that great about the cred system and how it's being placed in this game. Now, I do want to mention one thing, that even though there's some negative sort of reactions to this cred system, there doesn't seem to be nearly as much thought going into it as I have given you guys. I just don't see it. I see way more just overwhelming negative hate towards WildStar and their developers, not because of the cred system, but because of this return to a $15 a month subscription model that we haven't seen in a while. And it's so bad that I'm seeing people that I know for a fact I've seen in the past type up really hyped up, really positive, really excited comments, and just really following the game hard, instantly turn on their head, and they're jumping on the hate train here, condemning this game to go in the trash bin, pretty much. And it's really sad, because I don't feel like that's warranted, and I don't really see a lot of people going at this announcement with logic in their head and asking the question as to why we are going to get this subscription fee. Why are we going to get this payment model in this way? We're not getting that. But the thing is, why are we getting it? What is the reasoning? And I have a theory, as I mentioned earlier. I have some things that I've thought about, and I think I have a sound theory as to why we're getting it. So let's start from the beginning, shall we? What game is WildStar supposed to be emulating, and as said by the developers of Carbine themselves, the experiences they're trying to copy in the best way they can? What game is that? World of Warcraft. They've come out and said that they intend to copy the good parts of WoW. They want to emulate that same experience. Now, in addition to that, who owns Carbine Studios in WildStar? Well, as I mentioned, NCSoft. And just by coincidence, what other game that just so happens to be really popular is owned by NCSoft as well? Guild Wars 2. Now, is it not odd to anyone else that a game like Guild Wars 2, which came out and pioneered this buy-to-play system that everyone really seems to be crying for, and is the one that a lot of people just assumed was going to be this next big evolution of payment models for MMOs, why is it that a game like WildStar, that is also being published by NCSoft, is not receiving this very same payment model, especially when they've revealed it to be very profitable? Isn't this a little bit odd? Isn't this counterproductive even in some ways? Now, here's one of the things that's missing though. What style of content does WoW have that Guild Wars 2 does not have, that seems to have a presence in WildStar? Or at the very least, it seems to be where they're going with it. And the answer to that is large group PvE raid content, in particular hardcore group experiences. Now, I slightly mentioned this idea when I answered a question back with my Q&A for ESO as to why we hadn't seen a payment model on that game. And the idea was that Guild Wars 2 lacks in-game rating, maybe due to this lack of sufficient funding. And this interconnected set of facts that I've kind of put together in my head really points me to believe that the theory I mentioned there holds water. And you might be thinking, well, you know what, you just told me that NCSoft admitted to having pretty high profit margins from Guild Wars 2 in their gem store system. And indeed, that's correct. They have admitted to making fairly high amounts of money from that game. But it's also said that Guild Wars 2 wouldn't get an expansion, right? And then a few months later, the publishers, NCSoft, retracted that very statement, and then they made it fairly clear to everyone that Guild Wars 2 had to meet a substantial success, and in particular reach a threshold that they had marked in their books. And once Guild Wars 2 had reached that threshold, then they could give them the thumbs up, they could give them the okay for an expansion. Now, what does this mean for WildStar? And what does this just mean in general? And what it means, though, is NCSoft just really has their hands up to the elbow, up the developers' assholes, and they're controlling them like an expert puppeteer when it comes to funding their projects. Now, this is nothing new. This is absolutely nothing new at all when it comes to the games industry. But what it really alludes to is one big thing, that they're making the decision of what the content is going to be based on profit margins, and if they're high enough to further development, no matter the popularity of the product. So what does this mean for WildStar in particular? Well, it means that NCSoft and their accountants and their bigwigs are sitting up in their offices, and they're just looking at the paperwork, and they're sitting there trying to think of the best way to provide the hardcore in-game that no other games have been able to emulate and copy in quite the same way that WoW was able to deliver it over so many years now. And they're sitting there thinking, well, you know what's going to do it is we just need more profits. We need more money. And without the funding for a subscription fee, for example, the rating environment that they can provide just will be below par, below an acceptable way that it's implemented, or maybe not even exist in any way or form or fashion. Now, in addition to this idea that they're just not making enough money, they're not going to implement a buy-to-play system with content similar to Guild Wars 2 and a gem store system like that as well, simply because they just won't see the revenue. It won't be positive. Their gains will not be substantial enough, because players, especially with MMOs, have this tendency to jump from game to game. And even though Guild Wars 2 has a fairly lenient way that you can just play at your leisure, they wouldn't see it that way. They would see that people are maybe switching the games, and they would see a little bit of growth, because WildStar is a different game than Guild Wars 2, but they would see that people that play both would only be able to justify one purchase of real-life money, and they would just pick the one game that they're going to do it to. Now, this brings me to kind of my end here, and that's, I want to address this overly negative reaction. And I have to say, I agree that $15 a month sub fee is pretty steep, especially with just today's economy and the way that the world is right now, and the allure of free-to-play and buy-to-play as just much stronger payment models in everyone's minds. And for the mass majority, that's what people want. They want the buy-to-play and they want the free-to-play. However, as someone that admittedly misses this hardcore rating environment that, in my mind, has been essentially non-existent in any of the recent released MMOs, I think that if this is the true reason behind having the sub fee, as much as I think it is, I believe it's actually more acceptable, and it's something that MMO players shouldn't overlook. Now, in all honesty, I think NCSoft is playing this really smart. I don't agree with how heavy they are with controlling the developers, but they're playing it smart. They have a game with nearly zero barrier to entry in Guild Wars 2. There's nothing from stopping you playing that game at your own leisure, as I mentioned. And then they can release a game like WildStar, where they can have an answer for the hardcore fans that aren't satisfied with Guild Wars 2. They fill two very different niches here, and they don't really stamp on each other's toes. Neither one of them is going to have the mass appeal of a game like WoW, which, in all honesty, is an anomaly. But neither one of them are going to reach this mass appeal anywhere near that. In all honesty, that's okay, as long as the players that are within their game of choice gets the content they desire. And I have to say that before I go, I must admit that I have nearly zero excitement factor for WildStar as it is, but even though it's similar to all these games and I don't really like it, I hate this rampant backlash that they're getting, because these internet goers and these people who are anonymous on the internet, who just don't have any shame or care, they're just not giving it enough thought. They're not thinking about the payment model in a rational way. Again, I don't agree with the $15 a month being the standard anymore. I just don't feel like $15 a month is worthwhile anymore. We haven't had anything to prove to us that $15 a month is actually giving us substantial enough content to warrant paying that much. And I definitely don't agree with the cred system either. But I don't like seeing a developer who is obviously taking their game and its development and their time input into the game. They're taking it very seriously, and I don't like seeing these developers getting smashed into the ground by closed-mindedness and non-logical backlash. I just don't like seeing it. But I guess, guys, that'll do it for me. Let me know what you guys think about WildStar's subscription plan, and more importantly, do you think, as I do, that the hardcore in-game content is the real reason to needing a sub fee, and why it's being utilized in WildStar? I truly feel that that's the reason we're getting the subscription fee, and I actually hope that this game does well enough to prove that this is why the in-game content a lot of people desire from the hardcore background, why that's been absent in so many games. Maybe this is the first straw needed to prove to everyone that that money is actually going somewhere worthwhile. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about that. So let me thank you guys for watching. I'd like to ask you guys for a thumbs up, a subscribe if you could, some comments down below on pretty much anything you've got on your mind, really. And I know I've been slacking on this last part, especially with my more recent vids, but follow the imPULSE Gaming Facebook page for the most recent updates coming to the channel. And I also want to apologize to you guys for the real lack of flow and content, like kind of missing a little bit. I've been having issues with YouTube, and I have to admit, not feeling so well. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this little commentary, because I have a bit of a fever, so hopefully it was acceptable. But thanks again for watching, guys, and I will see you next time. Pulse out.